Hi, in this video we'll show you how to change your router bit on the Hoffmann X25 Dovetail routing machine with pneumatic operation. First thing as always is to unplug your main power. I like to unplug it right at the machine and keep the plug in my line of sight so I know that nobody can plug it in by mistake. That's especially important if your machine is plugged into a 20-30 foot power cord. If you simply unplug that power cord at the wall outlet and you work on changing the bit and somebody else plugs it back in, that makes for a bad surprise. So unplug it near the machine, keep the plug in your line of sight, and you're safe. The next step we want to do is we need to raise up our router bit a little bit so that we can work on it above the table, and to do that you step on the foot pedal, raise it up, and then lock it in place. Okay. Take my center plate off so I have a little bit more room to work on here. Set that aside. On the underside of the motor carriage is a 6mm Allen bolt. You use a 6mm Allen key, access it, and it's a little bit easier to get to from the other side of the machine. And you can loosen the bolt, and that will allow you to slide the motor straight out to the back of the machine. Place the motor here on the machine table. The 530 watt motors, you'll need a 14mm and a 17mm open end wrench. You loosen the collar. Once you break it loose, you can tell that you can turn the collar nut by hand, but the router bit is still tight. If you try to pull the router bit out now, you will cut your fingers. So you just turn it by hand until it tightens up again, and then use your 17mm wrench to get over that safety hump. Now that it's loose, the bit can be pulled out without a problem. Take your router bit out, use your new router bit that you like to install, put your 14mm wrench back on, and just make that hand tight, but make sure that you can slide the bit in and out. It's still adjustable. The next step, we'll take the chip breaker out of the machine table. Use a 3mm Allen key for that. Just open that up, take the little bolt out. Chip breaker can be set aside for now. You slide the motor back into the machine. Do not slide the motor all the way in so it bottoms out in the motor bracket. You want to keep it back about 3/30 seconds or about 2 millimeters to give yourself a little adjustment should you need it down the road. Slide it in, tighten up the bolt again so the motor is tight, and your square stop that comes with the machine is equipped with 3 notches on one side, 1, 2, and 3, and then the 4th one here. And there's engraved W1, W2, W3, and W4 for the 4 different router bits that we offer. What you want to do is take that square stop out of that track that is recessed here in the table. If you keep it in the track and use it to set up the bit, there's a little bit of a space between the end of the square stop and the back fence, and you're not going to get an accurate setting. Take it out, take the orange handle off, and turn it upside down. And now you use the corresponding step. In this case, we're using a W2 bit. So we're using the middle step to set our bit. Set this aside. Take the motor back out, because there's no way to really get to the collet and collet nut when the motor is installed. Set it on the machine table. 14 and 17mm open end wrench. And tighten up the collet. You want it nice and snug, but you don't need to bear down on it too much. And you slide the motor back in. And now you use your setup jig again for W2 in this case. Set it up. And tighten up your motor bracket here with the bolt on the back. There you go. Now the next step we want to do We're not going to install a new chip breaker just yet. We're going to lower the motor carriage, and we're going to make a test cut. Put our miter plate back on and use just 2 pieces of sample molding for a quick test cut to make sure we've got everything set correctly. Now I can plug the machine back in. And use a Dovetail key. Drive that in. I see it's nice and tight. And that's the setting that I like. I do like to see a little bit of a gap on the side of the key. That tells me that it's pulling it nice and tight. If you have very small or thin molding, you can adjust it, move the motor back a little bit. That will give you less draw on the joint. If you move the motor further in, the key will draw more, but also put more pressure on the molding. So now that the setting is good, I move my miter plate out of the way. I switch my motor off, but I keep it plugged in now. And I'm going to raise up my motor carriage a little bit higher than before and tighten it up here so it stays up. Now you can either install the old chip breaker that was in the machine, especially if you just switch, from a W2 to a W2 or from a regular to a W2 oversized. The chip breaker is still in good shape, no tear on the top. You can use the same one. If the chip breaker has been torn up over the course of its life, or if you're changing from a W2 to W3, you can install a new chip breaker. If you install a new chip breaker, they come with the new router bits. They're uncut because we don't know what size bit you're going to use, so we install that in here. Use our little Allen key to tighten it up. What we don't want to do is just cut from the top through the chip breaker, because that will likely cause it to tear out on the top, and a torn out chip breaker is not really helpful. So what we do is we place a piece of scrap wood on top, get that nice and tight. You can put a little block on here as well. And in order to slow the router carriage down as it moves down, the main cylinder here has 2 flow control valves, one on the top, one on the bottom. The one on the bottom controls the upward speed, the one on the top controls the return speed. What I'm going to do here now is use a small screwdriver and just close that all the way off for now. Now I raise that up, turn it on. Now you see it will not move down, and I can now very carefully adjust the speed. Adjust the speed for my first cut through the chip breaker. Mark on here. There we go. So now the new bit is installed, the new chip breaker is installed. It is nice and tight, there's no tear out on the top, and your machine is ready to go. If you ever have any questions when you're in the middle of changing a bit, something doesn't work out, please call us anytime. We're happy to help you, and we can most likely walk you through it over the phone.